The rain came without warning, turning the purple sky of Keck 7 into a wall of water. Thunder rolled across the valley like the roar of ancient beasts, and lightning split the darkness in jagged white streaks. Ambassador Revik pressed his scaled body against the cold stone wall of the research station, his clawed hands trembling as he watched the storm devour the landscape. His translator crackled with static before the human's voice came through, calm and steady. "Revik, gather the younglings. We need to move to the southern cave system." Revik turned to see Marcus Chen pulling on his weather-resistant jacket, his face showing no trace of the fear that currently froze Revik's blood. Behind the Kexian ambassador, 3 young cubs from his delegation huddled together, their eye membranes flickering with terror. The oldest was barely 7 solar cycles, sent by their families to learn about the new human allies. Now they whimpered as another crash of thunder shook the building. "The storm will destroy the station," Revik said, his translator struggling to convey the panic in his voice. "The structural integrity warnings are critical. We must call for evacuation ships." Marcus checked his portable scanner and shook his head. "No ships can fly in this. The electromagnetic interference would fry their systems before they cleared the atmosphere. We walk or we die here when the station collapses." The cubs cried out as a section of the ceiling groaned ominously. The youngest, a female named Siri, buried her face in Revik's side. Her whole body shook with each thunderclap, her breathing rapid and shallow. Revik knew the signs. Storm paralysis. A genetic memory from when his species was prey on their homeworld, when the great storms brought the sky predators. "They cannot walk," Revik said desperately. "The fear response is too strong. It is biological. We must wait for rescue." Marcus knelt beside the cubs, his dark eyes scanning each small face. Then he stood and began unpacking his field gear with efficient movements. "Then I'll carry them. Revik, can you walk?" "I am adult. I can control the fear response. But the cubs will be safe." Marcus pulled out a large thermal blanket and what looked like collapsible poles from his pack. "I've dealt with trauma responses before. Different species, same brain chemistry. Trust me." Another explosion of thunder. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency glow strips that painted everything in sickly green. Siri's cry became a high-pitched keen of terror. The other 2 cubs, brothers named Tak and Ven, pressed against each other so hard they seemed to merge into one trembling mass. Marcus moved quickly, speaking in a low, rhythmic voice as he worked. "Hey, little ones. I know you're scared. That's okay. Fear keeps us alive. But right now, we need to be smart and brave together." He fashioned the thermal blanket and poles into a makeshift stretcher, then did something that made Revik's scales stand on end. The human lay down on the floor between the 3 cubs and gathered them close to his body. "What are you doing?" Revik demanded. "Building a pack," Marcus said simply. "They need to know they're not alone, that something bigger and stronger is protecting them." The cubs, driven by instinct older than civilization, pressed against the human's warmth. Marcus wrapped his arms around them, creating a living shield. He began to hum, a deep sound that rumbled in his chest. Not quite a purr, not quite a growl, but something that spoke to the primitive brainstem that controlled fear. Revik watched in amazement as the cubs' breathing began to slow, their trembling decreased. Siri's keen faded to small whimpers. The human's heartbeat, strong and steady, became their anchor in the chaos. "Revik, I need you to be their leader now," Marcus said quietly. "Can you do that? Can you walk ahead and show them it's safe?" The Kexian ambassador felt his own fear response weakening as he watched this strange human calm his people's children with nothing but presence and warmth. He straightened his spine, forcing his claws to uncurl. "Yes, I can lead." "Good. Because we're leaving in 60 seconds, whether this building wants to cooperate or not." Marcus stood, lifting all three cubs with him in a configuration that should have been impossible. He had Siri on his back, her small arms wrapped around his neck. Tok and Ven he carried cradled against his chest, supported by the thermal blanket he'd tied into a sling. The cubs were still afraid, but they clung to their human protector with desperate trust. The journey to the caves was 3 kilometers of hell. The wind tried to tear them from their feet. Rain fell so hard it felt like gravel against exposed skin. Lightning turned the world into a strobe of terror. The ground itself seemed to shake with the storm's fury. Marcus never stopped moving. When Revik stumbled, the human's hand was there to catch him. When falling debris blocked their path, Marcus found another way around, protecting the cubs with his own body when necessary. His breathing grew labored, his steps less steady, but he never put the children down. Halfway to the caves, they had to cross an exposed ridge. The wind there was savage, strong enough to lift a Kexian adult off their feet. Revik pressed himself flat and began to crawl. Behind him, he heard Marcus grunt with effort. The human couldn't crawl while carrying the cubs. He had to walk, fully exposed to the wind's fury. Revik looked back and saw Marcus lean into the gale, his legs spread wide for stability, his jaw set with determination. The cubs screamed as the wind tried to rip them away, but Marcus held firm. Then the impossible happened. A gust strong enough to uproot trees slammed into them. Marcus staggered, went to one knee, and for a terrible moment, Revik thought they would all be swept away. But the human roared, an animal sound of defiance that somehow carried over the storm's fury. He rose back to his feet and took another step, then another. When they finally stumbled into the cave entrance, Marcus carefully set the cubs down before collapsing against the stone wall. His hands shook. Blood ran from a cut above his eye where flying debris had struck him. His breathing came in ragged gasps, but he was smiling. "Everyone okay?" he managed to ask. The cubs immediately pressed against him again, seeking the warmth and protection that had carried them through nightmare. Siri chirped softly, a sound of gratitude. Tok and Ven wrapped their small arms around the human's legs. Revik stared at the man who had just carried 3 children through conditions that would have killed most species. "Why?" he asked. "Why risk yourself for cubs not your own species? You could have moved faster without them. Saved yourself." Marcus looked genuinely confused by the question. "They're kids. What else was I supposed to do?" Outside, the storm raged for another 6 hours. Inside the cave, Marcus used emergency supplies to create a warm, safe space. He told the cubs stories, taught them human songs, and showed them magic tricks with simple sleight of hand. When exhaustion finally claimed them, they slept in a pile like the pack animals they had once been, with the human at the center. Revik watched it all and recorded everything. This moment, he knew, would change how the Kexian collective viewed humanity forever. The next morning, rescue ships arrived to find them safe. The research station had collapsed exactly as predicted. Without Marcus's quick thinking and impossible endurance, none of them would have survived. On the shuttle back to the orbital station, Siri sat in Marcus's lap, refusing to leave his side. The human seemed embarrassed by all the attention, scratching the back of his neck and insisting he'd just done what anyone would do. But Revik knew better. He had seen dozens of species respond to crisis. Most prioritized their own survival. Some showed remarkable courage in protecting their own kind. But only humans seemed to possess this strange instinct to protect the helpless, even at great cost to themselves, even when those helpless ones bore no genetic relation whatsoever. Weeks later, when Revik presented his report to the Collective Council, he included full recordings of that terrible night. The debate over military alliance with humanity had been contentious, with many fearful of human aggression and territorial nature. But after watching Marcus Chen carry 3 terrified Kexian cubs through a killer storm, after seeing him build a tent from his own body to shelter them, After witnessing him risk everything for children not his own, the vote was unanimous. Any species that would protect your cubs as if they were their own was not a species to fear. They were a species to stand beside. The cubs had shaken during the storm, yes, but the human had made them safe, and in doing so, he had made an entire civilization understand what humanity truly was. When news of the alliance reached Earth, Marcus Chen became an overnight hero, but those who knew him said he seemed uncomfortable with the fame. He kept a picture on his desk, though, sent by the cubs' families. It showed 3 young Kexians holding a banner written in careful human letters. "Thank you for being our shelter." On the bottom, in Marcus's handwriting, was a simple note. "They reminded me of my nieces. Couldn't leave them scared." That was humanity in a single sentence. They couldn't leave anyone scared. Not if they could help it. Not if there was even the smallest chance to make things right. The galaxy had produced many warrior races, many technological marvels, many ancient civilizations, but perhaps it had never produced anything quite like humans, a species whose greatest strength was not their weapons or their industry, but their stubborn, foolish, beautiful insistence on protecting those who could not protect themselves. The cubs had shaken during the storm. The human had made a tent and slept between them. And the universe would never be quite the same.